Well, it can be challenging to know when to rebalance your portfolio, especially when you're really thinking about the long term, right? So to share some strategies to do this, let's bring in Arwen Becker, owner Becker Retirement Group. Arwen, retirement time. People want to plan, they want to rebalance, they want to have money at the end. What do investors need to know when it comes to the rebalancing part for a long-term portfolio?
You know, Nicole, when I was thinking about rebalancing just as a topic, it's impossible for me to not think about one of the most heartbreaking experiences in my 21-year career. I actually sat with a gal in June of 2008 who had been widowed. She was 59, the average age that a woman is widowed, and she had no investment experience. And so one of the first things we realized is she was aggressively invested in some very concentrated stock. That's what her husband had done. And so one of the first things we needed to talk about as she was retired and wasn't working was rebalancing. And yet her son had convinced her to stay where she was. So she was invested aggressively, but yet when we tested out to see what her emotional capability was for risk, she tested out conservatively. So she really needed to be rebalanced closer to what she could emotionally handle and what her retirement could handle. And unfortunately, 3 months later, as you know, the worst stock market decline in our living history. And for her, that cost her nearly half of her retirement because it didn't get rebalanced. And so here we are, we're in the longest bull run in market history. And a lot of people start to get complacent. They kind of think, they kind of forget that we had severe experience in 2008. And yet the further we get away from that, we kind of start to go, you know, I'll let it stretch a little bit longer. This feels pretty good. But really, when it comes down to it, we need to rebalance. We should be doing this at least every 18 months to be looking at how do I still feel about risk? And as maybe if I do have an aggressive portfolio as part of my overall investment strategy, maybe that's just been growing to the moon, whereas everything else hasn't been. So we start to get a little top heavy. That's why we need to look at rebalancing. Make sure it still is in line with the objectives that we set forth when we weren't making maybe as emotional decisions.
Right, and I like the keep your emotions in check, don't get greedy, because we know bulls make money, bears make money, but pigs get slaughtered. I also like your phrase, hope for the best, plan for the worst, because you need to hedge and you need to be prepared for a downturn. And if someone wants to rebalance 18, I said, you just mentioned, like, you should do this at least every 18 months. But if someone wanted to talk with their advisor, even quarterly, to speak with you, I'm sure you'd be willing to check in with them and just say, hey, here's what it looks like. Here's what I'm thinking, right? I mean, there's no fault in calling your advisor and just making sure that you are allocated in a way that goes with your emotional risk tolerance.
And everybody, I mean, you go through different changes. So, I mean, different seasons or just moments in life might cause you to think a little bit different about risk or how you now feel about it. And so again, if you're not checking in and you're kind of just setting it and forgetting it, that can hurt you sometimes. And so making sure if you do have an advisor that they are communicating with you, you know, active management is something that we do. We have passive management as well. We've got the whole myriad of things. So, you know, that's something that we're communicating on a regular basis with our clients, but making sure that as you age and as you head into retirement or maybe already are retired, that you are decreasing your risk along the way, because the younger we are, the longer time horizon we have. But the older we are, we have less time to make up for significant market losses. So that's why it's good to just have this conversation regularly and then just retest with your advisor. We have a great test that we do. Make sure that your current portfolio still is in line with what you can emotionally handle and that your retirement has the capacity for that level of risk as well.
Have you found over the many years that certain things work, whether it's having some international or having large cap and small cap, or, you know, do you have a rule of thumb of an asset allocation that's a good start and then you adjust it?
That's always such a loaded question because it is so unique to everybody's specific circumstance. And so really, I mean, we love broad diversification, but being able to acquire that with as few holdings as possible is really important, especially for people who don't want a 60-page statement with a bunch of holdings. So being able to get broad diversification, but then also just
Right.
utilizing different investment tools to be the safer and low risk or no risk portion. And then I love those aggressive portions of my portfolio or of a client's portfolio that are going to be that inflation protection for the future or healthcare for the future or longevity protection for a lot of women. So it is still very unique to each individual person. So you got to make sure that it's not a
Sure.
blanket statement, but there's a lot of ways to
Yeah.
do this. But rebalancing is very important.
And what do you tell people who say, I'm so nervous, I just want to put so much of it in cash?
We try to help get them past that. There are a lot of great investments out there that are not allocated in the market that can still have some upside potential, like an indexed annuity or something like that, that's going to be able to get better than point nothing at the bank, right? So there are different things that you can have out there that still are safe, but are going to be able to get you a much better rate of return, but maybe not put you in that position where you feel like I might do something irresponsible when I see a lot of red on the screen of the market.
Right. Yeah, I see what you're saying. How are you feeling overall? I just have a few seconds left about this market that we're looking at now for the next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months.
Feeling pretty good, actually. I had somebody at my house today doing an inspection. He asked me the same thing. And truthfully, I'm still feeling very good about it, but we can't be complacent. We've got to make sure that it still
Right.
aligns with what our long-term values are.
Yeah. All right. Arwen, it's always great and wonderful to see you. Thank you so much. Arwen Becker, owner of Becker Retirement Group. Thanks, Arwen.